I know I'm really excited about our next presenter. Kimberly Gibson is the Ecosystem Director at America Makes, and she's going to be talking about the ecosystem approach for additive manufacturing. Kimberly, it's a pleasure to welcome you to the stage, and the stage is yours. I'll grab your slides up for you.
Thank you. Well, it's an absolute honor to be here. I hope that Sarah gets her money's worth for that lovely introduction. So I guess I'll get started. My name is Kimberly, and I am a newly minted America Makes employee in charge of the ecosystem pillar. So it's a great opportunity to share with you what I've been up to, and also I think that part of this being on the people track, we should talk to each other about who we actually are as human beings and women. So I have some fun slides that are coming up next. So Sarah, you're going to have to go through these a little bit slowly. So I'll cue you. So the first one, this is me, a little bit about me. I love to travel. And this is a picture of me in Abu Dhabi in the desert. And what you can't see on the side there is there's a camel that's about to get surly. So everyone loves to travel, right? The other thing is I like art. And yes, that is a Bob Ross official stand-up. And doing art, that was my very first Bob Ross painting. And I like my mountains, but the trees are not happy. So I think that it's important to express yourselves in as many ways as possible. And I have at the bottom there my two little girls, that's Pearl and Daisy. They're mother and daughter. They keep things lively. They are the doorbells in the house, among many other things. Also, so I like dogs. I don't like cooking, so that's why I put the ramen up there. I like eating, so if you want to invite me anywhere, I'll gladly eat. But I can cook, but I'm not awesome at it. So I like to bake, though. You can hang out with me and we'll bake. I am also a former recovering political policy wonk. 20 years working in lobbying at the state and federal level. So I'm always up for talking about my fantasy Congress with you guys, if you're into that sort of thing. I think I saw Lisa Arafun earlier today in this track talking about AM in Congress. I'm also a musician. I've been a performer on stage for many years. That was my band called Silver Funk. And I know Miss Mara Hittner is also a musician, and there's probably a couple of other of you out there. And I'm pretty sure those leather pants no longer fit after COVID. So they're retired for the moment, but we're working on it. The bottom picture beneath that is my team at IC3D. Many of you know that I'm co-founder at IC3D in Columbus, Ohio, focused on large and medium format FDM printing. And that's my team. And we're standing next to our first machine that we'll be selling. So it was a very tough choice for me to transition away from IC3D as their chief mischief officer and move to America Makes. But when you see a chance to take all of the things you've ever done in your life and turn them into something you think is going to make a huge difference, you have to take that chance. And so I have moved on to work with America Makes while still, keeping, in close touch with my colleagues at IC3D. The other thing that matters a lot to me is you see the lower right picture with packages of presents. So that was IC3D's 3D printed toys for tots. That was last year, not 2021, but 2020. And the reason that one is so impactful because it really unleashed the power of digital manufacturing and distributed manufacturing. There were 18,000 toys in that pile, and they were made by everyone but IC3D. They were made from amazing people around the country. And we started that project 4 years ago. And this year, it was 61,000 toys from over 450 partners in 49 states. So For me, the final thing I want to share about myself is that I'm committed to service to others. That's a thing that I do, and it's something that's very important to me. Now, a little bit about America Makes. So, America Makes is one of the first national institute among the national manufacturing institutes to have been created. Its mission is to accelerate the adoption of additive manufacturing. And the way that we do that is by convening, coordinating, and catalyzing the industry. This is all about advancing U.S. manufacturing competitiveness and security. There are 3 core activities that the Institute undertakes. The first one, as you can imagine, is technology. And that may be the place that you've seen my colleagues. Dr. Brandon Rybick is the head of the technology pillar. And that's all about, through big project calls and sifting through information, thinking about how we're going to transfer this technology into the supply chain. And then finally, continuous innovation in the area. The second pillar is education and workforce development. And so many of you may have met my colleague, Josh Kramer, who manages that pillar. And again, it's all about taking the panoply of options to put education and workforce in front of folks from K through Gray and really turning out some results. So I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then the pillar that I'm in charge of, this is the last one, is ecosystem and energizing that collaborative ecosystem. And all of these things that we do are enabled by great membership. The membership drives engagement. The membership are the format for collaboration. And this year, you're going to hear how I'm thinking about that to expand that. Certainly communications, the information that we share openly, and then operations. We are run by a not-for-profit institution called NCDMM. Next slide, please. Okay. Membership and ecosystem. So the fun thing about this is, when you look at America Makes, it has a diverse membership. You see a whole variety of industries listed there, from defense and aerospace have the biggest interest. Automotive is actually in there, and healthcare and medical devices. And then the rest is, a good mix of energy and electronics and agriculture and consumer products. So a great mix of member industries that are feeding the plans and the technology road mapping. Certainly a diversity of different ways we engage in the types of organizations. You have small business being the largest at 29%, and then large business at 21%. And I've got some fun factoids for you here. I hope they're gonna blow your mind on the nature of manufacturing. And so I actually think that this chart is pretty accurate in how it represents the total manufacturing in the country. So what's the reason to be involved or exist in this conversation with a national institute like America Makes? And really, it's about access to different types of funding, R&D funding through project calls and directed funding, thinking about, getting access to pre-competitive IP, things that we can do together before we decide to go off and compete in the marketplace, a chance to network with one another, learn, of course, that's why we're all here, right? And of course, just access AM resources and grow partnership opportunities. That's where the bread and butter is. Next slide, Sarah. And the next pillar I want to focus on is the education and workforce development pillar. That is one that I think has most recently really hit its stride. America Makes has a great education and workforce roadmap. And the idea behind this is to look at the challenges, look at the way that we train people, look at the way we come to them to make sure that the things we're teaching them, are best practices, the best way to do so. And depending on what kind of worker they are, is this a STEM area? Are we talking about curriculum? Are we talking about just raising awareness and knowledge? Or are we talking about measuring competency and skills, whether that's through classroom type learning or e-learning? Looking at that, of course, the industry experience is probably one of the most challenging, but also high reward when you talk about application specific training and you think about things like apprenticeships and approaches like co-ops and internships, which many of us have engaged in our time. So individual advancement, we're always thinking about mentorship and career development, no matter what age, because we certainly know that we have a lot of workers that are in their 50s and beyond that will need to adapt to stay in the workforce to new digital manufacturing technologies. In fact, we've heard some of that in many of the talks today and yesterday. And finally, it's just, how do you scale this? Because America Makes is just one place. And so scaling that to train the trainer, teach the teacher kinds of conversations is good. And one of the things I experienced was this real challenge is, when you have a new technology, and it's pretty boutique at the moment, and then you're trying to proliferate it into companies. There's only a handful of folks that can actually train to do that. So do you take it to a university? Do you take it to a community college? So filling that gap between when the universities and the community colleges do it to when, or the high schools, is something that we're looking at. And as a matter of fact, the next slide will show us that we have just launched a new web portal called AM Nation. Don't you love that? When I heard that AM Nation, I thought about the Janet Jackson Rhythm Nation, do, 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 come on, you did too. So this is a national pipeline portal for workforce and education. So you'll put best practices, great training procedures up there. It's really a place where the education workforce community can connect together. I put the website down there. Maybe since it's so new, we just launched it, probably haven't seen it yet. Take a look, connect, and let Josh Kramer know what you need. So the next pillar I want to talk about a little bit is technology. Now, there's not a whole lot I can tell you all about the importance of technology in this field. So there's so many different complex technologies that America Makes has worked with. So what I'm going to focus on in this moment is really the technology gaps that will strengthen the domestic supply chain. Of course, Department of Defense is our key collaborator and key funder in these efforts of strengthening warfighter capabilities and all around making sure the industrial supply base is robust is super important. So looking at design for additive, tolerances, post-processing, inspection, and cost and rate reduction. So this is all we think about. We live and breathe this every day, and pushing this into the supply chain is really, really important. And the next slide will show us how we do that. America Makes does a lot of road mapping. Road mapping is critical. So the Department of Defense has an AM roadmap that they maintain for their specific needs. America Makes memberships have their own roadmap for technologies, and the education and workforce, all the members contribute to those roadmaps, whether that's incremental improvement or getting down to basic principles to rethink and problem or a system entirely. The last one I want to focus on is the AMSC roadmap. And the reason that's really important to our topic is because that's about how we standardize things. And standardization helps the supply chain. It helps the ecosystem de-risk certain things, talk to their customers and suppliers in a different manner. So really figuring out what do we need to do to get more standardization for parts and other things in the AM supply chain. So here's the fun part. You remember those stats that I promised you? That's the next slide. So why should we take an ecosystem approach? I want to say, before I launch into the data, which you can see on the screen, is that I feel we're really blessed in this nation to have the freedom that we do to think and do. And we're really blessed to have that spirit of the possible when it comes to business. And we're blessed that you can register with the Secretary of State in your state For $125, you can create a company and begin manifesting your ideas and see if anybody wants to pay you for it. That is super cool. It is not the same in every country. It's not that easy to start businesses. And so the reason I brought that up is because there are more than 32 million small businesses in the US, and 81% of those firms have no employees. That means they're single proprietors. So, you started an LLC and it's just you. 19 businesses have paid employees. So really the level of, small business is a huge category, and you look at that number, but it starts to look at, 6 million is a little more manageable when you think of who is actually paying people. And it's also interesting that there are over 20,000, or I should say just 20,000 large businesses, anything over 500 employees. So the majority of manufacturing firms, this is what I want to focus on, are quite small. While there are more than 246,000 firms in the sector, all of them, all except 39,000 firms are small. And in fact, 3/4 of those firms have fewer than 20 employees. I don't know about you, but that blew my mind. And I think what it shows is that the complexity of the task, whether it's as a small business yourself, to find that customer, to find that technology implementation, to de-risk it, or if it's simply as a person that's trying to work inside those businesses and help them, how do you get to them? It's a challenge. It's very spread out. So the next slide we'll talk about which industries are championing AM today. Those industries, certainly we know academia, and a lot of us have stuff in our mouth from the dental industry that was additively made. They have really embraced it. Certainly our government and military have. Aerospace has. I would like to add space. While I realize that's supposed to be contained, I think we're going to start to see even more talk in the space area when the Space Force really gets going with some of their technology development efforts. Certainly medical, and medical is been doing things in additive. We all know that. We've heard great examples, but there's more that can be done. And so thinking about which industries can move forward. So auto, had some conversations with them. They're very interested. They're doing some things here and there, certainly with sports car platforms, supercar platforms. But I think, how do we scale additive in the auto sector? It's a really big challenge. And certainly power, energy, and 3D construction. So this is the marketplace. These are the opportunities. And the supply chain will be dramatically impacted as AM gets incorporated into these areas. So the next slide, I want to talk a little bit about what America Makes efforts are. Now, I'm talking at a really high level because, to be honest, I'm still working with my team to develop all the specific ways. But what I want to share with you is directionally where I'm headed and what our thinking is. And we are thinking solely about national strategy and local impact. That's super important. We need a big guiding force, but honestly, you saw the makeup of these small businesses. The small businesses, where it's at, you have to do that where they are. You can't expect to tell them to do something and be a part of something if you're not in their community. And that's a really hard thing for a national organization to do. So when we think about some of the ways America Makes is doing that, AMCPR was one. Now, the AMCPR is really about creating a strategic infrastructure for the U.S. manufacturing supply chain. And its focus is resilience and responsiveness. We all saw examples of COVID in the last 2 years where AM really proved what it could do. And this AMCPR was a quick thing to get that in place, to understand how to work together from people who design versus people who supply versus people who actually make things. It's an early effort. Hopefully something will be built upon in the future. The way that I'm also looking at it is you need places and states that really get it. And I am from Ohio, where there's more than 400 additive businesses and more than 6,000 companies in the defense supply chain. So if I'm going to look at how to test a framework for engaging the ecosystem for additive, I need to understand who's ready to integrate additive into their process, who and develop local leadership in those companies. So I am super excited to be, focusing in Ohio for now, and then learn so that I can disseminate that to other places. And then the other group of places I want to share with you is, yes, I know we use a lot of logo soup. The DMCSP, guess what that stands for? Defense Manufacturing Community Support Program. These are communities that have defense-related manufacturing at the core. They have a focal point. They're focused on it. And in 9 out of 11 of those communities identified it on this tiny map, just so you couldn't see it, is those are interested in additive. So that's a significant number of them who are pursuing additive. So we work with the DMCSPs on a regional ecosystem. And so working with Ohio and those groups to understand how to go out beyond there to places that may be a little more rural and places that don't necessarily have all of the pieces in place. We want to learn first and then take it on the road. Okay. So that was really my last slide because I did want to leave some room for questions. And so I want to encourage you and to help me energize that AM ecosystem. We're really going to need you in the future. Getting my ducks in a row. I'm organizing myself. We're going to create a national ecosystem advisory group. I'd love to see a lot of women in 3D printing on that group advising me, especially as it relates to the local AM working groups, wherever you are in your specific technology. I heard a lot of great talks over the last 2 days that I saw lots of leadership. And I was so excited to listen to these talks and know that it's these women could lead these local ecosystem working groups. Because honestly, I think the folks in those ecosystems don't always want to hear from somebody like me. They want to hear from each other and build that expertise locally. But, coordinating and catalyzing is definitely what I want to do. Also, as you think about, our industry is pretty new. It's pretty young. So we're still gathering data and understanding the macroeconomics of it. I want to support everything that we do with data. And so getting your thoughts on different macroeconomic studies, either that you're aware of or that you want to participate in, is something that we're very interested in. We also have a group of satellite centers I think they're in Wichita and Texas. And those satellite centers, the purpose of them was to expand the reach of America Makes and get an access to America Makes in places where a lot of manufacturing and innovation is already occurring. So we've experimented with 3 different places. I think it's time to scale that and expand it and understand strategic industrial verticals where we should be. And again, it's all about place. I'm so excited that Sarah asked me to be in the people track, because I do think that everything I've been talking about here, it's really about people. It's about engaging with people and making it better for all of us. And so, at America Makes, I think we have 25 staffers, and I'm right now the only person solely dedicated to ecosystems. So you can see with those big maps, it's going to get crowded pretty fast. So I look forward to entertaining any questions you have. I also see that Cynthia has put the locations, satellite centers up there. Thank you, Cynthia. I look forward to hearing from you after this event is over and seeing you out and about in the community. I'll be at Mill AM next week, so hope to see you there. But last slide is my contact information, and just absolutely glad to have this time with you.
Thank you so much, Kimberly. It's so great to learn more about everything you're doing, everything America Makes is doing, and how we can continue to build, a stronger additive manufacturing ecosystem altogether. You've been very thorough. We only have one question in the Q&A right now.
Oh no.
Too thorough. You got to leave more holes.
Sorry.
Let's not examine that statement. So you have chemicals in stasis, but it is the chemical industry supports the feedstock for the materials industry. Perhaps they could be rated as a support player, says Carol McDonald.
I love that idea, Carol. And I think it's important to share that that's a very real need. And to understand, obviously, when you're talking about polymers specifically, but the chemical industry using different ways to manufacture things is also looking at additive. And so I don't claim to be an expert on that area right now. But yes, I like that very much. And I think we would also, I didn't mention this because we're really trying to figure it out, but I've been getting a lot more interest in the idea of recyclable and reusable and reclaimable materials in additive. And as we continue to develop boutique materials that have, additives in them, such as, fibers or glass or who knows what, the idea of reusability and recyclability starts to enter into the mix. And I know we're still trying to perfect our technologies and deploy them. So raising another variable is the last darn thing anybody wants to do. I just think it would be irresponsible of us not to think about how if we get our dream and additive becomes something we use every day, we better understand before we unleash the Kraken that there's a way to reclaim and reuse and recycle this stuff. Because I would be very unhappy as a citizen and as a human if that didn't happen. So I know we'll be looking at that, but who knows if it'll be a focus or not. We got to see if you guys are interested.
I think the people are interested. Another question popped up asking, where does sustainability fit in AM ecosystems? So.
Oh my goodness. How prescient. I'm not looking at the chat, so I couldn't see. So I think that I think it does. And so as I just said, I believe that in polymers especially, we as an industry, it's incumbent upon us to get a handle on this, to understand the reusability. And it could be that, for some uses, you cannot recycle AM materials. It could be we have to create a whole nother recycling regime. It could be, and I will tell you this, then my local solid waste district, I was very excited to talk to them because I knew everybody. And I was like, oh my gosh, they're going to be so excited. We can help them recycle the water bottles out of the landfill. Maybe we could do a little project, blah, blah, blah. I was shocked to find that they were not interested at all because they make their money on tipping fees. And so it's just a sad state. So my excitement was immediately dashed. And I realized that there are so many bigger systems at play here that, it's going to be hard, but I know we can do it. I will also say that, it's not just about polymers. It's about understanding metals. There's some things that maybe we can't recycle or reuse for additive, for manufacturing, but maybe there's somebody else who could use it. And I'm familiar with this concept called byproduct synergy networks. And the idea is that one man's trash is another man's treasure. And I'm certainly not saying we are doing anything like this, but AM maybe should get involved in some of those BPS networks and see. I know Ohio has one, for example. Get involved in some of those networks and start to explore. So thank you for the question. I'm glad.
Okay. And Kimberly, before we let you go, we've got one final one. It's a very important question.
Oh.
And it's from Cynthia.
Oh, good.
And she would like to know when we are forming the TIPE rock band.
Oh, Cynthia, that's a great question because goodness knows we have so many talented ladies. I think we need to plan that maybe for Rapid, not this year, but
okay. Rock stars of women in 3D printing. You heard it here. It's time to form a band. Okay, thank you so much, Kimberly, and everyone else. Stay tuned on the People Track for our final panel of TIPE 2022 on the People Track.